And now I'm honored to invite Professor Liora Findler to talk about considering grandparents in early parenthood. Liora Findler is an associate professor at the School of Social Work in Bar-Ilan University here, and head of the Rehabilitation and Health track. Liora specializes in intergenerational relations in the family and grandparenthood in particular. Much of her research focuses on the unique experience of grandparents in families of children with disabilities, with an emphasis on positive outcomes and personal growth, alongside the challenges and difficulties in this role. Together with her colleague, Professor Taubman Ben-Ari, she constructed and validated the multidimensional experience of grandparenthood set of inventories, MEG, and co-authored the book titled Grandparents of Children with Disabilities, Theoretical Perspectives of Intergenerational Relationships. Liora.
Like a Russian matryoshka, a doll inside a doll, my mother and my grandmother and her mother and grandmother and all the generations are enfolded inside me, a serene line of women, like an avenue of strength. This symposium, is it okay? This symposium focuses on mothers, on fathers, on the transition to parenthood, but central to all parents are their own parents. And I wish to dedicate my words to these parents of the parents, namely to grandparents. This will be a Reader's Digest presentation, and all I want to say is that grandparents matter. Please consider them. Until the 80s, grandparenthood as a social and familial role was largely ignored, both in the empirical and the theoretical literature, but also in clinical practice. The transition to grandparenthood is among the most significant and exciting events in adult life, which leads to many changes. However, contrary to the wealth of research regarding other transitions in the adult life, like the transition to parenthood, for example, the transition to grandparenthood has not attracted extensive research attention. Generally speaking, grandparents have been either viewed as old-fashioned or idealized for their wisdom and for their experience. Even worse, grandparents have been removed from the family scene under the pretext that they might disrupt the natural course of growth in the family. A pediatrician by the name of Dr. Vollmer serves as a good example of this. He warned the parents and colleagues to be wary of grandparents, and especially grandmothers, who are one of the main problems in child rearing. And let's hear it in his words. She is a disturbing factor, the grandmother. She is a disturbing factor against which we are all obligated to protect the child according to the best of our ability. But good news, a change in this approach has begun with the rise of family system theory, which regards each family member not only as an individual, but also as a part of the family unit, both influencing and being influenced by. Along with these developments, demographic trends in modern society, משהו לא בסדר? לא שומעים אותי? עכשיו לא יראו אותי. תודה רבה. Along with these developments, demographic trends in modern society have also changed intergenerational relationships. Increased life longevity, for example, people are now grandparents for an average of 25 years. In addition, dramatic changes occurred in family structure. For example, many women are now working full-time, divorce rates have risen, and there are more single-parent families by choice. Naturally, these changes heighten the expectations from grandparents to help with child care. A review of the existing literature indicates a multifaceted experience of grandparenthood on the one hand, but a lack of a systematic theoretical framework on the other. And because of this, together with my colleague Orit Taubman-Ben-Ari, we created a model which examined the multidimensional experience of grandparenthood. This model is based on Yuras Model, conceptualization. And we include in our model four dimensions: the cognitive, the behavioral, the symbolic, and the emotional. The cognitive relates to rights and obligations of the role, the behavioral to instrumental and emotional support, and the symbolic to continuity, compensation for the past, and symbolic immortality, and positive and negative feelings. Naturally, the four dimensions are interrelated and are affected by diverse factors, including grandparents' personal characteristics and features of the family. Unlike the idealization of the grandparent role described earlier, this model indicates further complexity with each dimension and showed the positive and negative features which may exist side by side. I would like to elaborate on the symbolic dimension. Grandparenthood can be a very meaningful experience as it offers a sense of immortality, a sense of continuity, and serves to compensate for past disappointments. Grandchildren represent a link in the generational chain in which grandparents represent the past and grandchildren represent the future, the ones who will perpetuate the line of the family. As such, the relationship between grandparents and children often carries with it an aura of exclusivity. Oftentimes, grandparents' home is the place where three generations unite, and the grandchild's success is often a source of pride and satisfaction for grandparents who see these accomplishments as confirmation for their success as parents and as the dividend they have earned from their investment in their children. And to see mother's side. Mothers were, I told you it's a Reader's Digest. Mothers were asked to rank their support sources, and we can see that the four grandparents were significant in their support. Maternal grandmother was the first, followed by the mother-in-law, followed by maternal grandfather, and finally was the father-in-law. It is very important to note that under unique circumstances like disability in the family, and unfortunately I will not be able to elaborate on this, although this is my area of research, when under unique circumstances the maternal grandfather and the mother-in-law switch places. In other words, under unique circumstances, the family of origin becomes first and most important. Grandparent support can be manifested in both emotional and instrumental levels. Instrumental support, of course, includes babysitting, transportation, trips, financial assistance, whereas emotional support is provided through physical or verbal expressions of love. The emotional support they provide is more significant than the instrumental, as it is geared toward providing the adult child a sense of shared destiny and the security to openly and honestly express their pain, frustration, and disappointments without being the fear of being judged. Mothers of children saw the most significant help they received from the grandparents in their being rather than doing. A number of studies have found that the contribution of grandparents in families of young children is crucial. In fact, grandparents are frequently the first one to be called in case of emergency. Naturally, the positive picture painted here does not reflect all grandparents, some of whom may be indifferent or inactive. Although Israel is a very family-oriented society, and such grandparents are an exception. I see all the grandmothers smile. The desire to provide support and be involved in the life of their grandchild often clashes with grandparents' fear of interfering. The delicate dilemma becomes particularly sensitive in the case of transitions or crisis in the family. Grandparents often find themselves walking on eggshells in respect to their place within the lives of their children and grandchildren. They endeavor to support without being a burden, to guide without being intrusive, and to provide love and warmth without being cumbersome. The challenge nowadays is successful intergenerational relationships that are based on the balance between involvement and intervention. The potential value of the contribution of grandmothers and grandfathers to the support system of families of children cannot be overestimated. However, unfortunately, this potential contribution is not always fulfilled. And this is a professional's role. In a series of studies, we found that although professionals in the fields of health, education, and welfare do recognize the importance of grandparents' involvement and their contribution to various domains of functioning and adaptation, they rarely initiate meetings or interact with them. In other words, there is a huge gap between professionals' acknowledgement of the importance of grandparents' contribution and their willingness to invest in these relations in the family. It is advisable that professionals keep in mind the importance of the grandparents' role and create a partnership with them. This is especially crucial in the first stages of transition to grandparenthood and to parenthood in order to prevent conflicts in the future. Thank you.